Most readers remember Mrs. Dalloway as a novel about a woman, a party, and a single ordinary day. But that is not where the truth of this book lives. The truth lives elsewhere, in a man most readers are taught to overlook. Septimus is called a side character. But side characters do not carry the weight of a novel like this. He feels too much. He refuses to soften reality. And because of that, he reveals something uncomfortable, not just about society, but about what it takes to survive as a human being. If this book has ever stayed with you, leave its name in the comments. This video is not about Septimus. It is about what he exposes in all of us. Septimus is introduced quietly, but he changes the entire novel. In Mrs. Dalloway, Septimus does not arrive with importance. There is no announcement, no signal that the novel has just shifted its center of gravity. He appears almost accidentally, as if he could be removed without consequence. And that is precisely the illusion Virginia Woolf wants us to believe at first. Because once Septimus enters the narrative, the novel splits. Not structurally, but morally. Before him, the world of the book feels controlled. People move through streets. They prepare parties. They perform stability. Life appears arranged, survivable, even elegant. After Septimus, that illusion cannot fully hold. He introduces something Clarissa's world keeps carefully contained. Raw perception, unfiltered feeling, a mind that does not translate pain into acceptable language. What makes this moment easy to miss is its quietness. Woolf does not underline his arrival. She lets him drift into the text, the way certain people drift into our lives. Those who, without trying, expose truths we spend years avoiding. Septimus does not interrupt the novel. He destabilizes it from within. From this point on, Mrs. Dalloway can no longer be read as a refined social portrait alone. Every gesture of politeness gains a shadow. Every celebration echoes with an unspoken cost. This is why Septimus is not a parallel storyline. He is the pressure test. He shows us what happens when sensitivity is pushed beyond what society can absorb. And once we have seen that, we cannot unsee it. The novel continues quietly, but it is no longer innocent. Septimus is not mad. He is emotionally unprotected. In Mrs. Dalloway, Septimus is quickly labeled, doctors name him, language contains him. And once he is named, he is no longer listened to. Sir William Bradshaw speaks of proportion and rest, as if suffering were simply a failure to regulate. Septimus hears something else entirely. In order to erase what he feels, Woolf is not diagnosing madness here. She is showing us a man without insulation. Septimus feels everything at full volume. When he remembers the war, the past does not soften. When he sees beauty, it does not calm him, it overwhelms him. At one point, he looks at the world and feels that the leaves were alive. This is not hallucination in the crude sense. It is perception without distance. Here is the detail most readers miss. Septimus does not suffer because he has lost touch with reality. He suffers because he is too close to it. He has no buffer between experience and emotion. No inner mechanism that says, this hurts, but not too much. No translator that turns pain into something socially acceptable. When he says that human beings have committed the greatest crime, he is not speaking nonsense. He is reacting to a world that demands feeling be trimmed, reduced, made manageable. This is why Septimus unsettles everyone around him. Not because he is violent or erratic, but because he refuses or cannot learn emotional anesthesia. In a society built on moderation, unfiltered feeling looks like illness. Septimus forces a question the novel never asks out loud. How much truth can a person feel before they become intolerable? Woolf never answers. She lets Septimus exist at that limit. And that is why calling him mad is not an explanation. It is a way of looking away. Clarissa and Septimus share the same sensitivity. Clarissa and Septimus are often read as opposites. One moves gracefully through society, the other cannot survive it. But this contrast is misleading. At their core, Clarissa and Septimus share the same sensitivity, the same heightened awareness of life, the same vulnerability to beauty, memory, and loss. Clarissa feels moments intensely. A sound in the street, a memory from youth, a sudden awareness of being alive and of losing that aliveness. She is shaken by it, even when she smiles. The difference is not what they feel, it is what they do with it. Clarissa learns early how to contain herself. She turns intensity inward. She shapes it into manners, routines, and carefully chosen distances. Feeling becomes something to manage. Septimus never learns that skill. What Clarissa folds neatly into silence, Septimus experiences without filter. This is why Woolf binds them across the novel without letting them meet. They are not separate stories. They are two answers to the same question. What happens to a deeply sensitive person in a world that values composure? Clarissa survives by transforming sensitivity into performance. Septimus is destroyed because he refuses or cannot do the same. Neither response is presented as heroic, but only one is socially acceptable. This shared sensitivity explains Clarissa's reaction to Septimus later in the novel. She does not recoil. She recognizes not sympathy, recognition, because Septimus represents the version of herself that did not learn how to hide. In that sense, Septimus is not Clarissa's opposite. He is her exposed nerve, the truth she carries quietly, and the truth the novel cannot afford to silence. Clarissa survives by learning how to contain herself. If Clarissa and Septimus share the same sensitivity, then Clarissa's survival demands an explanation. That explanation is not strength, it is containment. Clarissa does not feel less than Septimus. She feels differently because she has learned where to place what she feels. From an early age, she discovers a crucial rule of social life. Intensity must be shaped, not expressed. Emotion must be distributed carefully, never allowed to gather too much force in one place. This is why her life is built from rituals. Morning walks, choosing flowers, hosting parties. These are not trivial habits. They are architectural supports, structures designed to hold emotion without letting it collapse inward. Clarissa learns to divide herself. What is felt deeply stays private. What is shown publicly becomes graceful, reassuring, controlled. In this sense, her famous composure is not natural. It is practiced. Where Septimus experiences the world as an unbroken flow, Clarissa introduces boundaries, pauses, distances. She does not deny pain. She rearranges it. This ability to contain herself allows Clarissa to remain socially functional. But Woolf is careful not to romanticize this skill. Containment has a cost. What Clarissa gains in stability, she loses in intensity. Moments of aliveness arrive briefly, and then must be folded away. Her survival depends on this discipline, but survival, the novel quietly suggests, is not the same as fullness. This is why Septimus unsettles her so deeply. He represents what happens when containment fails, and also what is lost when it succeeds. Clarissa lives because she learns how to hold herself together, but in doing so, she lives at a careful distance from the very feelings that once made life feel limitless. And the novel never lets us forget that this, too, is a kind of compromise. Society does not destroy Septimus, it simplifies him. If Clarissa survives by learning how to contain herself, then Septimus faces the opposite demand. He must be reduced. Society does not meet Septimus with cruelty. It meets him with calm voices, polite authority, and reassuring language. And that is precisely the danger. Doctors speak of proportion. They prescribe rest. They promise order. What they are really offering is simplification. Septimus is not asked to be understood. He is asked to be manageable. Everything that does not fit, his intensity, his moral outrage, his refusal to soften pain, is translated into something easier to handle. A label, a routine, a treatment. This is how the system works. Not by attacking complexity, but by flattening it, Clarissa learned how to simplify herself from the inside. She internalized the rules early and adjusted accordingly. Septimus never did, so society steps in to do it for him. This is the quiet violence Woolf exposes. A world that does not destroy sensitive people outright, but trims them down until nothing dangerous remains. Septimus is not overwhelmed by chaos. He is suffocated by order. His thoughts are not debated, they are dismissed. His pain is not explored, it is regulated. And once regulation replaces listening, meaning disappears. What makes this moment so unsettling is its familiarity. This is not an old system. It is a modern one. We still simplify what we cannot sit with. We still prefer efficiency to understanding. We still mistake calm procedures for care. Septimus becomes intolerable not because he is broken, but because he refuses to become smaller than what he feels. And in that refusal, he reveals something Clarissa's world depends on us never noticing. That society does not require truth. It requires functionality. Septimus is not destroyed by malice. He is erased by convenience. And once we see that, the novel's quiet elegance takes on a much darker weight. Septimus's death is a refusal, not a failure. If society simplifies Septimus in order to make him manageable, then his final act must be understood within that pressure. Septimus is cornered by calm voices, correct procedures, and well-meaning authority. Nothing around him is violent in appearance. Everything is reasonable. Everything is orderly. And that is precisely what leaves him with no inner space left. Woolf is extremely careful here. She does not frame Septimus's death as a collapse of will, nor as a loss of reason. She frames it as a last boundary. Throughout the novel, Septimus is asked again and again to surrender something essential: his way of seeing, his moral intensity, his refusal to dilute what he knows to be true. What he is offered in return is survival, but only on the condition of inner erasure. Seen this way, Septimus's death is not an admission of weakness. It is a refusal to accept a version of life that requires him to become smaller than his own consciousness. This does not make the act admirable. Woolf does not romanticize it, but she does give it meaning. She allows us to see that, for Septimus, the true catastrophe is not death itself, but the complete loss of inner freedom. This is where the novel becomes deeply unsettling, because it suggests that some forms of help are indistinguishable from coercion, and that survival, when stripped of dignity, can feel like another kind of disappearance. Septimus reaches the limit Clarissa carefully avoids. Where Clarissa compromises and lives, Septimus refuses and is lost. The novel does not tell us which response is correct, but it insists that we recognize the cost of both. Septimus's death is not presented as failure. It is presented as the moment when a human being says, "This is as far as I can be reduced." And in that refusal, Woolf forces us to confront a question that reaches far beyond the novel. What kind of life are we preserving when preservation demands the surrender of the self? By the time Mrs. Dalloway reaches its quiet close, Septimus is no longer simply a character. He has become a point of recognition. Not everyone will see themselves in him, but those who do feel it immediately. A tightening, a discomfort, a sense of being addressed. If you recognize Septimus, it is not because you share his fate. It is because you recognize the pressure he lives under. The pressure to be reasonable when you feel too much, to simplify your thoughts so they do not trouble others, to soften your reactions so they fit the room. Septimus represents the part of a person that does not translate well. The part that notices too sharply, feels too deeply, refuses to dilute experience into something palatable. Clarissa survives by learning how to manage that part of herself. Most of us do the same. We learn when to remain silent, when to smile instead of speak, when to compress what we feel into something smaller and safer. Septimus shows us what happens when that compression fails, or when a person refuses it entirely. This is why the novel does not ask us to admire him. It asks us to recognize him, because recognition is more dangerous than sympathy. It collapses distance. Once you see Septimus clearly, the novel stops being about a day in London. It becomes about a question that follows you beyond the page. How much of yourself have you learned to edit in order to remain acceptable? If that question unsettles you, then this novel was never about Clarissa's party. It was about you, standing quietly at the edge of your own life, deciding what parts of yourself are allowed to remain intact. If you want to keep asking questions like this, not only of Mrs. Dalloway, but of the great works that continue to shape how we understand ourselves, you are welcome to stay. Subscribe, and we will keep reading beneath the surface together.